I'm still not sold on that name, but we're gonna go with it. Thursday night on tour. I am very excited to have a special guest, which listen. I know that this is somebody that a lot of people have been wanting to talk to, and so I hope that we can get a lot of questions answered out there. But would you please introduce yourself and tell us who you are?
Hello, my name is Dave George. I am the head electrician for the tour.
That's awesome. Like, this is the guy that like handles all the lights, and the only reason that you can see the show is because of what he does. Come on in. Hello. I've got Dave with me tonight for the ThNOT Live. We are already on. We're already on. So Dave, why don't you tell us, like, what is your job title? What are you in charge of here at Les Mis?
My job title is head electrician. That basically means I am responsible for the lighting, video, and atmospherics for the show. So me and my two assistants are responsible for moving the show and recreating it the way it was when the designers were there in tech to make the show, because there were 10 people there in tech for the lighting and video department.
That's nuts.
Wow.
10 folks.
Paul Constable, the lighting designer, whose work I think is absolutely brilliant, by the way.
It's gorgeous.
I love the show. And she had two associate designers. We had a lighting programmer. We had a video designer, a video programmer, a production electrician, and the 3 touring electricians, as well as the local staff for the tech for the show. So it's a big thing, and my responsibility is to take that thing that we made and make it look the same every night in every different theater that we go to.
So when it comes to like the tech process then, right? What was that like for you? What were your kind of day in and day out? Were you still running the board, or like how did that work? So tech process meaning our technical rehearsals where we add in the end of our rehearsal period before we start performances. Tech rehearsals is where we add all the elements. So we add the lighting, we add the sound, we add costumes, wigs, makeup. But all of that has to be built around what we're doing on stage. It's not kind of a preset because it's rebuilt for every tour. Yes. So what was your day in and day out in the tech process like?
I started about the same time the cast did in New York, building the show in a shop for our, because we don't, the tour does not own the gear, we rent it from a rental company. So I was in their shop building the lighting package for the show. And then the week before the cast moved to Cleveland for rehearsals, we were there putting our set and lighting into the theater there. And then once tech rehearsals started, most of the day I was backstage working on paperwork, working on set practicals.
Oh wow, okay, great.
And it was only the last 2 weeks that I was out on the light board because Alyssa, the programmer, was on the board for the first part of the rehearsals.
So someone just asked who designs like the gobos and things like that. So patterns, gobos are patterns, correct?
Yes.
That we use on stage.
This show doesn't use a whole lot of gobos. The ones we use are stock, but they are Polly Constable decides the gobos, and if any show wants custom gobos, the lighting designer is the one who chooses the gobos and or creates the custom gobos and then makes and then the show buys them and puts them into the lights.
So someone just asked how many hours a week do you work? So let's start with like a normal day. What does a day for you, like today happens to be a 2-show day. We're in our final week here in Toronto. So there was already a matinee this afternoon. There's a show tonight. So what does a 2-show day look like for you?
Crew call is an hour and a half before the performance. So we come in an hour before the actor's half hour, turn on the system, power everything up, run through and check everything. I test every moving light, every fog machine, every conventional fixture in the rig, run it through all of its attributes to make sure everything is working the way it should be. That takes about 20 minutes. We fix any problems that we have, and then we're off stage by half hour so they can open the house for the audience to come in.
There you go. So on a 2-show day, then you have to come back and do that all over again before the evening show. So every element is kind of tested. How many, when I say elements, I mean lighting equipment. How many, is that what you call elements too?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm a little bit broader, referring also to projectors and fog machines and everything else. But yeah, we have 88 moving lights in the rig, about 100 conventional fixtures. Quite a few of those have color changers on them. And then I think there's 4 projectors for the video, and then there are, sorry, doing math real fast.
No. I'm fascinated by all this.
12 fog machines.
Jeez.
I run 4 different fog systems for the show to create the atmospherics.
Cow. So how many light cues do you have in the show?
It's about 400.
Woo! Hello, Michael.
Hello.
We are doing a whole evening about lighting this evening.
Oh,
it's
lighting.
very fun.
Very
yes. So 400 light cues in the show.
That I take. There's the way the cues are built. If I'm talking to people who know a little more about lighting. There's a lot of auto follow cues where one thing happens and then 2 or 3 other things follow automatically in there.
Got it.
So there's
okay.
more than 400 cues, but there's 400 that I actually push the button for during the show.
That's a lot of button pushing. That was like, did your finger have carpal tunnel?
I trade it out a little. I trade fingers.
Talking about so then for there's a final battle scene on the barricade, and there are all of these shafts of light that hit actors at certain points for gunshots, so that it's that is when they are killed on the barricade. How does that one work? Is that actually you pushing that button?
90% of the cues in there are me pushing the button. There are a few cues sequenced in the barricades that are timed specifically with sound effects, gunshots. Those are fired through a protocol called MIDI that's coming from the soundboard, just so that when they fire the sound effect, the lighting links perfectly, so we don't have gunshot light change.
Right.
So there's a few of those in there, but the rest of the sequence I'm running every night. The battle sequence is the hardest thing to learn in the show.
I can imagine.
To get all of those beats correct.
Timing. And is that on you and the stage manager? Because the stage manager calling all of those?
Yeah, stage manager calls all of the lighting cues. At this point, I know them pretty effectively where they go. I know exactly where they go.
I was like, come on.
1,200
yeah,
times.
exactly. He said it
but,
so much. He has to sit out back and watch it every single night, so he knows where they all go.
But the stage manager is giving me a go for every single cue that I take.
My goodness. What is your favorite light cue in the show?
There's a couple of moments in the barricades right before Bring Him Home during Drink With Me. I think Polly really created this beautiful evening light with layers, almost looks like some post-Renaissance paintings that she captured with that. My favorite sequence to run is out of prologue into At the End of the Day.
Oh yeah.
Timing with you getting the yellow ticket of leave rip right there and the blackout, and then the next cue I take puts the logo up, and then running through with the sliders opening and the cast moving downstage. So
with the yellow, now I'm fascinated. With the yellow ticket rip, is that on you? Are you taking that off of what you see?
Stage manager calls
it.
And stage manager calls it, and Bradley and I try and hit it perfectly. And that's our game every night. Bradley's my assistant who calls and runs follow spots.
Follow spot.
Bradley's on the follow spot on you, and I'm on the board, and we're trying to get it just at
and
the
it is
moment.
It is pretty perfect every night. Every night I'm like, oh yeah, because then I have to run off stage. What happens if something doesn't go? If a light cue doesn't go, or in that situation, what then happens?
Generally speaking, I find the fastest, if the show's still running and we didn't have to have a stop for some emergency or something, I try and find the fastest way I can to get us back in the least noticeable fashion as possible. It happens. We miss cues.
It's live theater. It's live theater. I think that's also the fun of live theater. And I mean, because I've done the show as many times as I have now, I also can tell when something's just a little off. You know what I mean? And I think that is also fun because, it keeps. People ask me like, how do you keep doing the show so long? And I'm like, because there are things like that make it interesting. You know
changes.
What I mean? Yeah.
I've watched the show, like I said, about 1,200 times, I think, in the time I've been on Les Mis.
Yeah.
And it changes night to night depending on who's on in the cast, I watch different little bits of it, but that's how it stays interesting. And we have, we'll miss a light cue here or there, but most of them an audience won't notice. There's some that you really will if we screw it up.
Yeah.
And we try not to screw those up.
No, when I tell you, they never do. What happens if the lights just stop working?
That's
a bad thing.
Yes.
If that happens. I'm just letting everybody know.
Usually, if the entire system stops working, it's because we've lost power. And at that point, we are at the mercy of the local power company.
Exactly.
Or whatever
Which
happened in the building.
Which has happened a couple times. It has happened a couple times. So people are now asking, what is your experience? So did you go to school for this? How did we get to be here?
I took a bit of a circuitous route to head electrician on Les Miserables. I did go to school. My undergrad's from University of Oregon, and I did shows there, and I worked over hire for the IATSE local in Eugene, Oregon.
Oh, okay.
We
played.
We were there. Yes. That was the first time I did Les Mis. I did the load-in of that show, actually, on September 11th.
Oh, that's right.
Because I was in college as a local loading in Les Mis on 9/11. So that's where I started doing work at this scale, at touring productions. And then I did an internship after that at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival for a year, regional theater in Southern Oregon, with a pretty good reputation.
Yeah.
And then I went to, at the time I believed I wanted to be a lighting designer. So I went to grad school in New York, did a year, and then realized that I was too young and not making the connections that I would need to graduate and work.
Right.
So I left, did some freelance work here and there, a couple of small theaters. I worked at Utah Festival Opera for a summer. And then one day I got a phone call from Feld Entertainment. My resume was up on a jobs board, and they were looking for somebody with some of my programming skills to take a Disney on Ice show to Japan and Europe.
Oh!
That's how I started touring.
I love it.
And I did that for 10 years, started as a board op, ended up head rigger for Disney on Ice shows, and then somebody I had worked with, and this, if you're trying to work in this industry, is a good lesson in why it is important to be kind, be generous with your time, and just generally work with people.
Yes.
Is I worked with Mary Anderson for 4 weeks in 2013. And in 2018, she called me, and she was the front light on this, and their head electrician was leaving, and she asked me if I was interested in the job. And that's how I ended up as the head electrician on Les Mis.
And here we are. So it is so important. I hear this all the time. It's important to make the connections, but also just treat people as human beings, because you never know when they're going to call and say, hey, we have a job. Are you available?
Yes.
It's amazing. Someone just asked, how many people are on your team?
There are 3 touring electricians with the show. So there's 3 of us that took the show from tech and are on, both of my assistants have moved on, and so I have different assistants than in tech, but there's 3 of us that tour with the show. We hire 6 local electricians to run the show, 3 spotlight operators, 2 deck electricians, and then the head electrician who runs house lights and puts out fires for us if we have any.
Yeah.
And then, not literally, just solves problems.
Yeah.
And then we have 14 local electricians that work with us on load in and load out. So I have 22 people working for me on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday to get the show to move.
How many trucks do the lights themselves take up?
we're a little spread out, just timing-wise how it works, but we're at least 2, possibly 2.5 trucks worth of gear for this show.
That's amazing. And then how long would you think that your overall load-in time takes? I know that it's spread out over a couple days just because of when things are flowing and stuff like that.
Our load-in is mostly day one. We have an 8-hour day on Monday, and that's at the end of that day, if everything is going well, I have my trusses are flown, front of house is hung, I have turned on everything and seen it work. So that I come in on Tuesday morning, turn it all back on, make sure everything is good. We start focus at 9 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday with the stage managers on stage helping me call conventional focus, all the...
all that has to be redone in every single city.
It's all moved in different spaces. Yeah. And while the stage managers are doing conventional focus, I'm refocusing all the moving lights for the show, which is really the hardest part, the most show critical part of what I do is redo the moving light focus each city, because I have 1,140 specific moving light positions that I have to redo every Tuesday.
Every week.
Most of it's pretty similar because the trusses are in the same spot, but out in the front of the house, those moving lights are in very different places because not every theater's balcony rail's in the same place.
Correct.
So I have to figure out what the best way to recreate the look of the show is and make it as close to what it should be.
Someone just asked, do you ever get a day off? No.
When we sit for more than 1 week, we do.
Yeah.
Otherwise, no.
We are here. We've been very lucky, and actually we have to let Dave go so he can go out front and I can get on stage. But we have been very lucky that we've been sitting in Toronto for now coming at the end of our 10th week here. And this is the longest that we've had a sit in any city, and it has been absolutely glorious.
It is wonderful.
It has been wonderful to have time to actually enjoy our day off and let this hardworking crew that does this day in, day out, week in, week out, get some much needed rest, because this is the reason that you see Les Mis every night, is the amount of work that these fine people do every single day, every single week. So, Dave, thank you so much.
Of course.
Thanks for sharing your expertise and your knowledge, and I'm sorry if we didn't answer all of your questions, but put them in the comments and I will try to get them answered. Next week, it's just going to be me. It's just going to be me for ThNOT. We're going to kind of just do a catch-up of Toronto, and I'll answer all sorts of questions that you have. I saw some questions come in about how to audition for Les Mis and all sorts of stuff like that. So you know what? We're going to do that next week. It'll just be me. We're going to be in Atlanta at the Fox Theater, which is the biggest theater in the country. Mm-hmm. So we're very excited about that. But thank you again, Dave. Thank you so much for sharing, and enjoy. Catch you Saturday night for our final ThNOT in Toronto, and we'll see y'all soon. Bye.